So there has been a lot of changes since the last upload, and I mean a lot. I'll try to cover the details in another video, but for now, I'll cover as much as I can so we can get to what this video is about. So let's jump into it. For starters, I got a dog. His name is Chubbs and he's almost 2 years old. I started doing photo shoots here and there. My first niece Audrey was born. I met my girlfriend Lauda. We went on some dates. Everything you imagine it be? Crashed my car after leaving her house from one of those dates. I hit a deer. Moved in with Lauda. Got a new car. We had Lauda's family spend the holidays with us. We had a record-breaking snowstorm. Chubbs got to experience snow for the first time. Almost crashed my car again. Celebrated Audrey's first birthday. Then finally, what this video is all about, Lauda and I decided to take a trip to her home country of Colombia in April. As most of my friends and family know, my girlfriend is Colombian. Her and her parents came to the States a couple years ago. They originally flew into LA and lived there for a while until ultimately moving here to Washington. So our flight was from Portland, Oregon to Houston, Texas, and from Houston to the capital of Colombia, Bogota, where Lauda lived most of her life. The flight in total was about 10 hours, 5 from Portland and 5 from Houston. We purposely chose a 10-hour layover in Houston so Lauda can see one of her friends that she hasn't seen in a few years. We grabbed breakfast at the Toasted Yolk. Lauda and her friend got to catch up a bit. The 10 hours passed and we were back on our final depart to Colombia. We arrived sometime around 10 p.m. I believe. It was too dark and we were in a rush, so I didn't have time to film our arrival. We were greeted by her friends and family, and they took us a few miles down the road from the airport where Lauda's sister, Diana, lives. Lauda had some quick catching up to do with her friends, and then finally, it was time for bed. Now, we spent a little over 2 weeks in Colombia, and I wasn't able to film a whole lot. You see, a lot of us Americans have this stigma about Colombia, and we usually associate it with its past. But Colombia is not what it was 30 years ago, and a lot has changed. Colombia is one of the safest South American countries for tourists to visit, and its growing economy is thanks to that. Even though Colombia is safe for the most part, as a tourist, you should still stay vigilant. Use common sense, don't flash money, or pull out your cell phone every 5 seconds. It's still a developing country, and it has its fair share of poverty. Just don't try to draw unwanted attention to yourself, and be respectful. You should be just fine. Anyway, because of this, I wasn't pulling out my camera like I usually would. Lauda would usually give me the green or red light whenever she felt it was appropriate to do so. We get to do a lot of sightseeing, and of course I tried many fruits I've never seen before. They also have avocados bigger than my head, the smallest one being bigger than my hand. One of our first stops was at her Uncle Fernando's place. His apartment was beautiful. You would have never been able to imagine what it was going to look like just based on the outside of the building. It took me by surprise. We had lunch with him. He shared a lot about himself and his country. Surprisingly, most of Lauda's family knew English, so it wasn't hard communicating, which made things a lot easier. The next night, Lauda's cousin Sarah took us out to this big club. From what I was told, most of Bogota's rich children tend to go there. And I'd believe it because as cheap as things were to purchase in Colombia, this place's menu pushed my pocket a bit. We ended up buying a bucket that was literally filled with alcohol. It took all 5 of us to finish it. The next day was my birthday. I turned 31. We went over to Lauda's Aunt Gloria's apartment. Again, another beautiful place. They celebrated my birthday party there, and they served an assortment of fried food. From what I remember and understand, I believe it was a mix between Colombian and Caribbean food. I think one of the most memorable experiences that I will never forget that night is after we ate. We took a drive into the city and ended up at the famous Plaza de Boulevard. This place is usually packed with people and pigeons during the day, but we had it all to ourselves, and it was a surreal feeling looking at all the architecture. I never imagined I'd be doing something like this. Lauda and I had bought bus tickets to go see her grandfather, Don Pedro, who lived in the next town over, the town of Fusagasugá, or Fusa for short. Her grandfather is a cool old man. He showed us where he lives and gave us a tour of the community garden. I got to see plants for the first time that I never got to see before. A lot of them I forget the names, but amongst these fruits was the breadfruit, bananas, papayas, guanabana, and of course the infamous coffee bean, which he had a bag full of at his house along with an old-fashioned coffee grinder. I really wish I was able to take the stuff back home. The next day he took us to the city of Ibagué. The road trip was amazing and long, and we got to go over the infamous viaduct the government built to alleviate the commute to the neighboring towns. We eventually arrived at our hotel. Laura and I are staying in a town called Ibagué in Colombia, and the hotel we're at is called Casa Morales Hotel International. After we got our stuff settled, we went ahead and hit the town. We did as much sightseeing as we could in our short stay. We hit up a restaurant and had milkshakes, watched some of the local street performers, did some shopping, and got some empanadas before eventually calling it a night. Of course, I wasn't able to get everything on camera, but I was satisfied with the amount we got to do and see. Her grandfather just about paid for the entire trip, hotel and all, and I hope he knows how grateful we are to have had that experience. I really hope to see him again. Once we got back into Bogota, Laura and I decided to treat her sister and her kids out to dinner to thank them for taking care of us during our stay. The place was called Crepes and Waffles. It's basically the Colombian version of the Cheesecake Factory here in the States. The gimmick? It is all ran by single mothers. So, we are nearing the end of our trip. Laura and I bought plane tickets to Santa Marta, and we had her cousin Sarah, her friend Alejandra, and her boyfriend Jorge join us. The domestic flight was only about 40 minutes long. Once we arrived, we had a cab take us to our hostel, La Brisa Loca. After we left our bags there, we decided to go check out the local beach and went sightseeing. We took a break at one of the plazas to get away from the heat. I'm guessing it had to be well over 100 degrees compared to Bogota's 65-70 degree weather. We eventually went back to our hostel to check in and explore what it had to offer. The place was amazing. It had 3 floors. The bottom floor is where the pool and a reception desk was located. The middle floor had the restaurant, bar, and the rooms. The 3rd floor, the roof, was an expansion of the bar, and at night they would host a DJ and have parties. Soon after, we met up with Alejandra and her boyfriend and Sarah, and went out to explore and have dinner. Ultimately coming back to the hostel to end the night upstairs, dancing and drinking. Mind you, beer was incredibly cheap. The next day, we checked out of our hostel and took a bus to our next hostel in a small town outside Santa Marta. To get to this hostel, we had to walk over a mile, which doesn't sound like much, but in 100+ degree weather and in sandals it was a bit challenging. The walk was beautiful though. We were surrounded by coconut trees the whole way, and we had my Bluetooth speaker with us to help with the walk. But you know what? It was all worth it, because
don't let me down. I told you things about me. Don't let me down. I'll let you put your arms around me. 'Cause love is a waste of time if you and I don't do this right.
At this point, my camera fell in the sand. I was able to save it with some surgery once I got home, but I wasn't able to continue filming with the rest of the trip. The trip was amazing though. I left Colombia with a different view of the country, and a stronger sense of connection to Laura. This last year and a half has been life-changing. A lot has happened, and I hope I am able to continue sharing my experiences with you all. Also, I want to thank Laura's family for being so hospitable and treating me as one of their own. And with that, I hope you all enjoy watching, and remember, subscribe.